You're listening to the Changing Normal podcast, where we strive to outdo the old normal and reject the new normal. And now your hosts, Owen, Dan, and Ben.
Welcome to episode 12. This is July 21st. And today we've got some really cool stuff. We're going to have an interview for you guys about getting started in homesteading. So that's super cool. In our crazy crypto corner, we're going to talk about crypto is a scam. That should be a fun one. But first up, what have you guys been up to this week? Owen, I think you were posting some really cool stuff about car preps.
Yeah, I've been kind of working on that. I mentioned it in a previous show that I was working on that. But I actually have most of my stuff I ordered came in. And of course, this works really well with audio. I'm gonna hold it up to the camera so that all the listeners can see it. So this is what came. My car organizer, my back of the seat organizer thing, which is jam-packed full now of stuff. So I've got all the medical stuff, and I'm going to do a more comprehensive breakdown of what that is, I think, on a new show, on another show sometime. And I might even do a YouTube video breaking it all down and for people, sort of what I had in there. But yeah, that was kind of fun. Always fun to get packages in the mail. And some of that stuff, of course, was medical supplies. So I ordered some extras to put in our sort of home medical kits and resupply some things that were maybe expired, add some things that we didn't have that we should have, stuff like that. Looking into getting my ham license, my amateur radio license. So that's cool. Yeah, that's kind of something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I've just never done it. I'm not overly technical when it comes to that stuff.
And yet you are the tech support for this show.
Yeah, figure that one out. So yeah, I'm just kind of feeling my way through that. I haven't actually ordered the book or anything. There's no way to really do it online. The test online, it looks like. There is courses you can take online, but you can also just read the book. So I'm going to read the book, and then there is a place you can go and do like the practice exams for it. That's the questions, I believe, are drawn from the actual exam question bank or something like that. So figure if I do those until I can, make a good mark, then I should be fine to then go challenge it. Yesterday, of course, on the homestead was chicken killing day.
Nice.
So I spent all day before setting up, and some this morning cleaning up. Still haven't finished all the cleanup and putting away. So we did about roughly 150 chickens yesterday morning. We weren't quite as fast this year for some reason. I don't know. But it was a little under 5 hours. We were able to do them all in. So that wasn't too bad. And then have a much better setup this year for doing the bagging part of it. And so other times it would be a 12-hour day. We'd start at 7 a.m. and it would be 7 p.m. before we had everything bagged up and in the freezer. And this year we were done by 3:00. So the new bagging setup with like the heat shrink bags, these heat shrink food grade bags. That was did I tell you the story about that? Trying to get those bags.
I haven't heard this story.
Oh my word.
Just obtaining the bags?
Obtaining the bags, because
really,
if I was smart, I would plan this ahead after last year when I would have ordered them, right? And so, but no, of course, it's 2 weeks before we have to do chickens.
Okay.
And I'm
now I get you. Yeah, I've done this.
Okay. And I'm like, oh, I need to order bags. Oh, wait, I can't get bags here in 2 weeks, or just barely. So here's what I did. So I ordered some vacuum pack bags, but we find vacuum packing is quite slow when you have that many birds to do, because you're dependent on the machine to do the work. So I wanted to use these heat shrink bags. You just dip them in hot water and they shrink around the chicken, whatever. So I found some. So I was like, Amazon's going to be my fastest shipping for sure. So I jump on Amazon. They have them. There's not a bad price, whatever. I put them in my cart. I can get them here by Tuesday of this week. So I was like, good. We're doing chickens Wednesday. That'll be perfect. So I place the order for like 200 bags or whatever, plus the vacuum pack ones that I needed to order. And so that, that's great. Goes through shipping, whatever date. A week later, I get them. So yeah, literally a week later, I get an update from Amazon. Yeah, your shipment's going to be delayed till sometime in August. So I was like, oh my word. So I was like, oh, that's great. So I said, well, I'll get it. I'll order now the vacuum pack bags were going to come right away. So I said, well, I'll order more of those because I know I'll get them in time. Because I went on and I still could get them before the day. So I was like, well, I'll order another 100 of those. Then I'll have them. Then at least, if we have to, we'll do it just with the vacuum packer like other years. It'll suck, but whatever. It'll be what it's going to be.
Pun intended.
What's that?
Pun intended.
Pun intended. Yeah. So then I put them. So I ordered them. They're shipped. And I was thinking, well, maybe there's some other place. You should look around and see if there's other place. So I look around. Well, I found the Berry Hill website. My dad used to order stuff from Berry Hill years ago, and stuff. So I just was perusing around it, and I saw it, and free shipping over $100 and this and that. And I was like, and then they had a little chat thing where you could like chat message them with questions. So I sent them a message, and I was like, hey, like, how do you guys ship? Do you ship Canada Post or courier? Like, what's the deal? And I didn't hear anything back because they weren't in the office. Small company. Next day, I get a text from them because they had to put your phone number in, like for the chat thing. So they text me and they're like, yeah, this is Berry Hill. How can we help you? I was like, well, probably doesn't matter now, but I just was going to buy these bags and my other shipment got delayed and blah, blah, blah. We're doing chickens next week. I explained the whole thing outright. But I'm sure there's no way you can get them to me by Tuesday. Like it's Thursday now of the previous week. Oh yeah, we think we could do that. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, if you put your order in right now. So I was like, all right, I'll go do that. And they're like, well, when you put your order in, text us your order number. So I do the order up on my phone and on my morning break and get the order number from the email and text it to them. And they're like, yeah, well, we'll make sure it gets out today. Shows up Monday.
Holy.
So I had all kinds of. I had the 200 vacuum pack bags I ordered, plus 50 other ones that I had. I got the 200 Ziplocs or the 200 shrink wrap ones from Berry Hill, plus the 200 I already ordered on Amazon that are still in the mail on their way. I have all kinds of bags. Definitely won't need to order any next year.
That is great.
Oh, anyway, those bags work fantastic. So they cut like 4 hours off our time for finishing up the chicken. Mm-hmm. So that was.
You just have a propane burner, probably big pot, and just drop them in.
No, that was going to be the backup plan. But what I actually did is, because my scalder is an automatic scalder, mm-hmm. With the scalding barrel, I run off a PID. So a PID is basically an electronic device that will send intermittent power to something to regulate temperature, for example. So it's the elements are wired through that, okay. Hook into that. It has a temperature probe in the water, and it can basically hold the temperature of the water at exactly what you want. So you put in 148 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's what I like my chicken boiling water at for taking the feathers off. And it holds it at within like 0.1 or 2 degrees.
Holy smokes.
Of that temperature. It's amazing. It's really cut out a lot of issues with waiting for water to heat up or getting it too hot and having the birds get rip and things like that. So it's really sped up our killing process as well. we can do almost like somewhere between 30, 40 birds an hour with our setup now. So,
Nice.
and that we might even be able to push that a bit if we were really on the ball. Anyway, so no, what I did is I have a barrel, a smaller barrel with an element in it that I use for another purpose, but I just wired the correct plug up to that, plugged it into the same PID when we were done that. Within an hour and a half or so, or 2 hours, the water was up to 180 degrees. And we usually have a bit of a layoff. We finish killing the chickens and then we go have lunch and give some time for the birds to cool down in their ice water. And then by that time it was heated up and at 180 degrees and away we went. And it held it right at exactly the right temperature. So, yeah.
What's been up with you this week, Ben?
Not a whole lot. Been a relatively mundane, just kind of really putting in the last few touches of training for nationals. Actually, next week, if we record on Thursday night, it'll be I'll be in PEI. So,
okay,
Lord willing, all that goes well, and we'll have a different background, and hopefully it looks halfway decent. I've been sucked down the lightning rabbit hole with Bitcoin. So I heard Jack Spirko talk about how it's like the most exciting technology out there right now, and I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts, and I mean, working out and running and stuff like that. I've had a decent amount of time. But now the latest thing has been stacker.news, and it's basically part of, I can't remember if it's Web 3 or Web 5, but the just being able to log into a site with your Lightning wallet. I think we might have talked about it in the past, in a past episode or something like that, but nothing attached to your identity whatsoever. And then you can stack sats by commenting and posting and things like that. So I did an AMA with Alex Gladstein or Stein. I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce his last name, but on there, it's basically the quicker, cleaner, lightning enabled version of Reddit. So, but yeah, that's kind of the most interesting thing of note. Looking at my archery gear and seeing when all the draw dates for deer tags and things like that are in the province. So that's also on the radar. So yeah, not too much this week.
Okay, good stuff. And did either of you listen to the What Bitcoin Did podcast episode from, I think it was released on the 17th with Jeff Snyder? He said, everything you know about the economy is wrong. Man, I listened to that one twice this week just to try and pick up on everything he was saying.
No, I don't listen to that podcast. So no, I didn't hear that one.
No, it's interesting because he's an economist, but most of the economists that have been on or are on Bitcoin podcasts are Austrian economists from that school of thought, and he is not. So he said some right. Different things, but some interesting insights into, I guess, central banking and how little control they actually have, and they're just totally making stuff up. So.
Well, that's a little bit obvious. How little control they have and the making stuff up part.
Yeah, he pretty much discounted the Federal Reserve, though. So it was some interesting.
Okay,
but he did lead off by really saying how much he is, I guess, fixed on the theory that you need an elastic money supply, which is a lot different from the Austrian one, which believes that the money supply should stay fixed. It's more Keynesian, or I guess our postmodern economics follows that line of thinking too, that you should be expanding the money supply as the economy expands. Mm-hmm. So
instead of expanding the value.
Yeah, well, deflation apparently is a terrible catastrophe. So I'm not sure I believe that line of thinking. So I'm gonna have to learn that argument to see how strong it is. But
Right.
Another interesting thing I did this week, I got a tour of ranch this morning, and definitely a learning opportunity for me because it's a different climate than what I'm used to. So so many different considerations. Around here, they have a problem with a fungus, an endophyte in the fescue, and it can produce some toxins that aren't very healthy for the cattle, or can reduce the feed consumption. They'll graze less. Definitely, the heat is also a factor in grass production. So, some of the things they do and trying to get things like big blue stem and Indian grass in production. So, to learn a little bit about that, feel very much like an amateur. It's funny how I could be around something like cattle my whole life, but there's still regional differences, and you run into things that haven't seen before. So that's cool. Let's jump into the crypto corner. This one, I was looking at the things we'd talked about so far on the pod about crypto, and we never addressed head on the crypto is a scam claim. And you do see that a little bit, maybe more than a little bit on the internet.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
depends which search engine you use.
It's not totally inaccurate, is it?
No, not at all. There's definitely, like, that's where pump and dump schemes come from, right? It's just spinning something up that they can push to either celebrities or people in circles, and then they just pump, and then because it's a scam and they're on the inside, they can sell it all and take all the profit at the the all-time high or whatever, and leave other people holding the bag.
Yeah, trading schemes. I think it's definitely worth pointing out that if you look at the cryptography, the distributed ledgers, blockchains, those things are technology. So by definition, that's neither good nor bad, I think. Sounds
Correct.
like a fair statement to you guys?
Yeah.
Yep,
I agree.
So it's really how that technology is employed. And I'm going to make the statement, it may be a little too broad, that almost all cryptocurrencies are scamish. So Ben mentioned the...
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you're defining cryptocurrencies, right? I mean, there's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. Right. So that is a true statement to say that almost all cryptocurrencies are scams or scamish.
I wouldn't say full on scams, in that I think there's maybe not all bad intents from developers, but that doesn't mean it's a good investment just because they don't have bad intentions. It's definitely easy to start up a blockchain. I mean, it can be as simple as copying an existing one and calling it a new thing, or tweaking it a little bit, tweaking the protocol, tweak the white paper. You make up a prestigious name of so-and-so who went to this university and worked on this project in the past. And, and then people say, oh, this could be the new thing. So it's easy to get sucked into projects that sound legitimate, but then a lot of people are buying into things that are wildly illegitimate or outright jokes. Like Dogecoin was developed openly as a joke. And people still think they're going to the moon with their Dogecoin. So that, I don't know, that one is hard to figure, I think. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's going to be tied into the whole crushing amount of FOMO, fear of missing out, that cryptocurrency. But it's also the psychology, because I know I struggled with it myself, and that's why I bought a bunch of different alternative coins like XRP and XLM and stuff like that. It's because Bitcoin is now sitting at whatever it is. It's like right at 30,000 Canadian or something like that. And to my in my brain, I'm thinking, I don't have $30,000 to buy one Bitcoin. Of course, and that was before I got sucked down the rabbit hole and realized, I can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. I just remembered the really cool thing I did last week. Anyway, but like that element of the psychology side of cryptocurrencies and being able to like for whatever it is, Shiba Inu or whatever coin, like it's like 0.00000 whatever dollars for one Shiba. So like you spend $100 and you've got like 30 million of them. I mean, obviously the math's not right on that one, but that that part, and then also the number go up, right? Like, I mean, but the number go up ties into the fear of missing out as well. But yeah.
Well, I think that's what drives a lot of that is people saying, well, I need to, 10x or 100x or 100,000x my amounts. And if I can hold a lot of this for cheap right now, when it does go 100x or 1,000x or, whatever their promise it's going to, I'll be rich and then I'll sell it. Right. I mean, that's the theory behind it. And I think there was a lot of that, especially years ago when, especially I saw this a lot in sort of the alt boom after sort of 2016, 2017, 2000, right before that all-time high and crash, alts were really pumping hard. And you saw a lot of that. People were like, well, what's the next Bitcoin? Because they didn't understand what Bitcoin was even. They didn't understand Bitcoin as sound money. They just went, well, Bitcoin did this, but it's 20,000. It's never going to go. I mean, it's never going to go higher than that. It's too late. I've missed the boat on Bitcoin. So I got to find the next Bitcoin, the next thing that's going to follow that pattern. And it just showed a lack of understanding of A, what Bitcoin was, and B, that not everything that glitters is Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's kind of treating the whole crypto space as just a fad, and you just want to jump on the latest one, right? The latest hot one, and you're going to ride that one up and then dump it, and it'll be somebody else left holding the bag. So that isn't looking at any of the fundamentals. It's not understanding sound money competition. And so that's something I like to point out. In the race to be the number one money, I mean, you only have one winner. Everything else is going to be a loser to that. If you look at historically with the physical money, gold was king and everything else was insignificant. I mean, there was like barely a runner up or two in silver. But the gap between gold and silver just kept widening. And it's going to be that way with everything that's competing to be money. They're not going to keep up with Bitcoin at this point. So definitely for people out there who are new to the space and they see something that's claiming to be it's going to be the fastest and the cheapest money, unless it's Bitcoin, it's not something you should be buying.
And it's going to take a lot to be faster than lightning.
Yep. It's easier to start up a blockchain and make promises of what it can do. I've seen some of those. They promise like cross-chain functionality, or they're going to be some, I don't know, they're going to do some really cool thing. They're going to be the latest decentralized app, they're going to make Ethereum work better. Whatever it might be, they're going to be the fastest coin on the market. Promises doesn't mean there's any fundamentals underneath whatsoever. So don't read those promises and take them at face value. 90% of them are either goals or they're not even going to attempt to get there. So don't fall for the promises of what a coin developer is going to do in the future. So you really got to look at what it is today.
Yeah, it's a bit of a misnomer to use the term a coin because that associates it with money, and that's how a lot of people view these things. Well, it's just different types of money, digital money. But that's really not what most cryptocurrencies are or even try to be. And you can approach those things from, perspective of saying, well, this is like a stock, and if the company does well, and makes the right choices in the marketplace and blah, 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 I can invest now and, make some money. But you if you were going to invest in a stock, in a conventional stock, which is heavily regulated by the SEC and those types of organizations and stock exchanges, you actually are safer that way because of the regulation, because they have to jump through a lot of hoops. You don't have that yet in the cryptocurrency world. And so it's much harder to know, is this person legitimate or is this person just, setting themselves up for a windfall while you take the loss? Doesn't mean that you shouldn't necessarily, as long as you approach it from the right perspective, do that proper research, and maybe see a track record. But most of the things on the stock exchange, they're not new startups. They're things that have been around a while, and you can look at the track record and balance sheets and things like that. So,
Well, I know we touched on it with Ethereum, right? Like Ethereum, somewhere around. I'm not sure exactly where that number falls now with all the burning that they do with their NFTs, but it's like something like 70% of all Ethereum in existence is held by the people that were there from the start of it, like stuff like that. So
yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, if I could get people to take away one thing, would be, don't fall into the FOMO.
100%.
Bitcoin for at least set a period of time for yourself so that you don't cheat on it. 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever it is, while you're actually learning about some of the fundamentals of this new technology space, and just stick with the Bitcoin. Don't get sucked into all these other things. All right. In our main topic this week, we're actually having a little bit of a change of pace. We have our first interviewee. So welcome to the show, Ben. The other Ben.
A new Ben.
Yes, this is not at all confusing.
By the way, other Ben, or how do we sort this out?
We can't even say Ben and the last initial because they're both the same initial.
Just call me Benji. That's what I did in university because there was too many Ben C's.
I see.
Okay, Benji. Okay.
And that was my least used nickname, so that works perfectly.
All right. So we've got Benji on, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the struggles of starting homesteading. But first off, what's your background? Like, how did you get to this point in life?
Wow.
That's a little broad, maybe, but broad strokes kind of fill us in a little bit.
The short version is I wanted to be a doctor, so I went to a bachelor's degree, learned a lot about animal physiology, and tried to go to med school. It never ended up happening, and then wanted to learn and figure out how to do stuff. So I went to trade school, became a welder for a little bit, but then still didn't really love it, and then fell in love with the idea of self-sufficiency. I lived in a camper for a time and sort of tried the whole like tiny living van life type thing. Lived in a bus and then drove across the country and realized that it doesn't take a lot to live simply and to live small. I mean, at the time I lived off of like cans of chunky Campbell's soup, but now since we've gotten into homesteading, and I mean, if you look at the price of things like gas and groceries and stuff's just getting ridiculous. So we're more moving towards being able to support ourselves. We're looking into solar stuff so we can go off grid. But even just today, we picked up 100 meat birds that we're going to be raising from chicks. So it's been a journey getting to where we are, and we're nowhere near where we want to be, but it's been a journey nonetheless.
Okay, cool. So what would you say? So you're not a doctor, I'm presuming, I'm guessing. Maybe you are. I don't know. No. So what's your background? Like, maybe you don't want to talk about what you do for a living.
No, but I can. Sure. I make videos for a living. It's so weird that I just actually have a video.
You doctor videos, so to speak.
Yeah, I still cut things up. I did want to be a surgeon. I don't know after the last 2 years if I would have been a great doctor then, but now in this, it's something that I've taken all those skills. I mean, I learned a lot throughout university and then through trade school, and then now I am a video editor or a TV producer, or some people would call it a YouTuber, I guess. I hate using that term, but technically, our video that goes up tomorrow is our first sponsored video. So I've been fortunate enough that since I've come back home, be able to build this brand, Homegrown, and it's a show on Bell TV and it's a show on YouTube, and we've had a lot of fun in sort of documenting our journey, and we're hoping to teach people a little bit more about homesteading and about how to do this yourself. And the way I kind of go about it is by telling people or showing people what not to do more often than not.
Okay, so what was the specific thing that led you to want a homestead? It's like, I mean, was it an epiphany? Was it a dream? Did the skies open and angels came down?
It's been a combination of things, and like from loving animals as a kid, and I mean, I don't see pets as very useful. So just the need and the personal desire to have things that are useful and to have a purpose. And I think everybody's sort of looking for a purpose in life. And I've just found that mine is first and foremost to take care of my family and to take care of our extended family. So to be able to take care of our little boy Sawyer and my fiance Nicole, and then our extended family, and be able to get more people into this lifestyle, because it's something that I love now. And I don't really have a background in it. I mean, I spent one summer working on a farm when I was in university. So a lot of what we're learning is just off the cuff from stuff we can learn online, or I've been really fortunate with the show this year to be able to go to people's houses, people's farms, and to learn from them. We learned from a butcher this spring that we went to, and I literally cut a cow in half. So being able to have these experiences has been paramount in learning and moving forward. But there wasn't really a singular moment that was like, I need to do this. It was more just a series of things that was like, I love animals, I love self-sufficiency. I mean, I'm kind of arrogant at times, so being able to figure out how to do it on my own, or how to do things on my own, and be able to grow our own food. I mean, I've been the type of guy that for the last 5 or 10 years, if I could have a job and I would work 40 hours in 2 days rather than work, and to be able to do what I want rather than work a 40-hour work week. So what I find that I'm doing is something similar with my video production. Is I'll work 2 heavy days for editing. I'll spend the weekend sort of messing around, filming and stuff, but the rest of the time is me working on the homestead, figuring out our animals, our bees and whatnot, and just sort of continuing to fall in love with this lifestyle.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, you kind of partially answered this question. So what is, 'cause a lot of people have different ideas of what being a homesteader is. And in some ways it is probably different for everybody. Different people take it to different levels and things like that. Some people say, oh, just doing what you can at home is being a homesteader. Some people think having a few chickens in the backyard is homesteading. Other people think, well, you need to be making a living off of what you produce. So, like, where do you fall in that sort of sliding scale?
There's a lot of like, even what people would classify me as for my job, like they call me an influencer or YouTuber, a TV producer. There's a lot of words that get thrown around around homesteader, and I think there's no real singular answer. I think it's different for everybody. You can follow it back to the root word of homestead, where you are just being where you're at home. And so there's things like preppers, and then there's things like farmers, and I think we're more moving towards the farming of it, because we do want to make money at it. In my mind, at least, homesteading is more doing it for yourself, producing for yourself, and that self-sufficiency kind of thing. But as soon as you start to get more into the, at this point you may be asking yourself two questions. as soon as you start getting more into the sales and commercial side of things, you start getting into more of the realm of farming, at least in my mind. So you're starting to make a little money at it, and maybe you can turn it into your living. And I think homesteading can turn into farming and have some semblance of self-sufficiency in different parts of different things. But what happens is I find, especially online, there's a lot of animosity from different genres of people, and homesteading can be whatever you want it to be. I mean, if you just want to have chickens, then sure, you can have chickens, but it is living purposefully and being able to do what you can to support your family.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me is like you said, self-sufficiency. And that's kind of, it started in small steps. And we talk about that we've talked about that a few times here already, just taking those few small steps and then influencing the circle around you. And
Why is my phone is being ridiculous right now?
getting better and letting that circle grow.
So
Ben froze.
That's okay. Technical difficulties are a part of the show.
Yeah. Our technical difficulties are here for everyone's entertainment.
Yeah, self-sufficiency in small steps. Like that's a huge part of what, like even just the name of the podcast, the Changing Normal. What is normal is, pretty much what I do. Get up, 8 to 5 job, but having the courage to step out and do your own entrepreneurial thing, your influencer thing, like that's huge. So yeah, I love the self-sufficiency part of that. It's awesome.
Is that something you're moving towards too, Ben, that you want to be more self-reliant and get out of that 9 to 5 job?
100%. Yeah. That's especially over the last 2 years, the realization that the reliance on said stability of a 9 to 5 job it's not going to last, especially for someone like myself that has a relatively countercultural mindset. I got a few plans in the works. They're in relatively infantile stages, but that's definitely a goal. Yeah. So even from listening to story time with Benji, I've seen the seeds of it in your life, and it's definitely been a little bit of a push in mine as well. And I'm in a pretty good circle of people who are key on self-sufficiency and living outside of what is normal.
I find that's something that people don't put enough emphasis on is the community aspect. I feel that in the beginning of 2020, it was something that people talked about and really joked about, that like, oh, we're going to start our own community because we're sort of countercultural, like you said. But it's something that's kind of waned, but still definitely necessary, especially for people who don't necessarily carry the same views as what you're seeing in mainstream media and seeing all over the place right now. That I have found even in the last week that it's like I feel lost. I feel like I'm a different person than 99% of people in the world. But if you can find the 1 or even 5% of people that you can identify with and that you have things in common with, or more so, and I feel like despite not seeing it as much online, there are more of us than we think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree 100% with that one.
Yeah, and that segues quite well into mindset. And the type of mindset that maybe a person has to have or maybe needs to adopt when they're starting to homestead. So was there something sort of in your mind that when you started out, you either had, or something maybe that you realized after starting homesteading, you needed to have a certain mindset or adopt, a mentality that you didn't have before? Is there anything that stands out to you that...
I've always had this kind of this strong constitution, and that's kind of sounds a little conceited, but I've had this idea of death happens, and I have this realistic expectation of life and death, and I think it's something that as we homestead and as we move towards more, I kill our own chickens, I butcher our own animals, so it's seeing that death firsthand has been something that's weird, because it's not something growing up that I was ever really privy to. I think other people have been blessed to grow up on farms or other homesteads, but it was something that I grew up in town. We never had animals outside of pets. And when I saw family members pass or even pets pass, it was always a devastating loss. But I find when you approach it from a farm standpoint or from a homestead standpoint, you're really confronted with death all of the time, like weirdly so. Like we've had chicks from the incubator that just didn't survive, or chickens that froze in the wintertime. And it's something that even that I don't share a lot about on YouTube or a lot about in our TV show, but it really happens. And I feel bad that I can't do it adequate justice to be able to talk about those things, because what it comes off as is animal abuse, or what it seems to be is animal abuse. But the reality is animals die, and so even humans die. Like, some people just drop dead for no reason. So you could go out in the morning, your pig could be dead, and you're just like, I don't know, and not wanting to, or not having the finances to have autopsy done on it by a vet. I mean, it happens. Yeah, it may be a financial loss, but especially you got to count your losses. Or sometimes cut your losses and figure out, okay, is it worth it to figure out, is something wrong in the feed I'm feeding it? Is there something wrong in the conditions that I'm growing it in? But I've found that my mindset is constantly changing. I'm constantly learning new things. I mean, I went into the feed store today expecting to pick up 20 chickens or 20 chicks, and I left with 100. I don't have room for 100 chickens, but I started calling people and I was like, hey, I got 8 weeks and these will be ready and I'm going to butcher them. And now I'm like, right before the podcast, I was going in Amazon and I'm like, chicken plucker. I don't have a chicken plucker. The last time I butchered chickens was literally 10 chickens and I did them all at once. Now I have 100 that I've got. I mean, I might be able to spread it over a weekend, but like, I got to figure out, and that's something that homesteading is fun for me. I like solving problems. That's a reason I wanted to be a doctor, is I wanted to be able to solve problems and figure things out. And that was something I learned in trade school when I went to be a welder, was how to fix things. The biggest thing I got taught in trade school was, if you mess up, don't tell anybody, fix it. And I think that goes for a lot of things on the homestead too. It's just like, you don't necessarily have to tell somebody if you can fix it. And that goes counter everything I was sort of taught as a kid. That's like, okay, if you mess up, just tell an adult and it's okay. But I'm an adult now, and somehow I have to figure out all this crap that I'm like,
you are the adult, hopefully.
Yeah, I somehow, I'm almost 30, so now I go out to the chicken coop and there's a frozen chicken hanging on the roost, and I'm like, it's the middle of winter, what do I do with this chicken? And you just kind of got to dispose of things that pass, and you just got to be realistic about what your expectations are of this lifestyle. Because I think some people online, and I think it's out of necessity because you can't share certain things online, but you get this glorified lifestyle of van life. I had a very glorified idea of what van life would be for me, and it was beautiful to travel across the country, but I mean, it was depressing, it was lonely, and homesteading can be that way, but it's a lot of freaking work, and it definitely takes a strong constitution and an open mind to be able to, how are you going to feed your family? Is it something you're going to go fishing? Is it something you're going to keep chickens and pigs? And what are you going to do? And how far or how deep? And I think you guys would be the right guys to talk to. You want to get deeper and you want to change your life for the better. And I think this is definitely the way to go, because for the last 20 or 30 years, nobody's really been talking about it other than sort of the hustle lifestyle, how to make money and how to do this and but it hasn't been how to take care of your family and how to take care of yourself and how to make nutritious meals and grow nutritious food. We've just always had the luxury of the grocery store, but now with grocery prices and food shortages, things are changing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what you're seeing. I mean, at one time, taking care of your family was getting that good job and making enough money that you could have the luxury of buying all of those things. And that's great as long as those things are available, and inflation hasn't stolen all of what you make. And now we're seeing sort of the flop of that, the other side of that hill. To some extent, while I still think we're better off than probably 90% of the world, we are on the other side of that hill in some respects. And just going back to what you're talking about death, I think that's super important, because if you didn't grow up with that, I mean, I did, but I know a lot of people who didn't, and literally a generation of people who think that meat comes, so if they eat meat, that it comes wrapped in cellophane. And there's no association between what the cost was of getting that meat. And I don't mean financial cost. I mean the fact that a life, albeit a life with no soul, but a life nonetheless had to be taken for that. that hits home a little bit harder when you have to do it yourself. And even if you don't actually do the butchering yourself, but even just the raising of the animal and the sending it off to a butcher, there still is a much closer appreciation for, that sustenance that the animal gave you.
Was hunting ever a part of your guys' lifestyles growing up?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't so much for me when I was younger, but I kind of got into hunting as an adult. But I was raised with, chickens and pigs and cows and all that sort of stuff, and we did all that ourselves. So but not quite. Yeah, hunting not so much, and it is a little different. There is a perception in a lot of people's minds, I think, that separates, shooting the magnificent wild and free, buck in the woods from let's beat the dumb cow over the head with a baseball bat or whatever,
Yeah, the stories I've heard. I mean, when my fiance and I, or my now fiance and I got together, she was 10 years vegan. And through some gastrointestinal issues and just she wasn't feeling well mentally, physically, she started changing her diet, slowly reintroducing things like eggs and milk. And I think within the year of us being together, she went from 100% vegan to like wouldn't even touch meat. Like she was disgusted by meat and hamburger. Like we were making separate meals where I'd cook my meat and she's prepping a roast to put in the smoker tomorrow. So it's 100% different. And even with regards to death, my mom told me a nice story that she had a boyfriend in high school that accidentally, I suppose, went home with her on Butcher Day, and he was appalled that they would butcher so many chickens. Like, yeah, I think she said her mom ran up to her with blood all over her hands, like, Wendy, you gotta come, let's go. And he was so appalled and just said, what are you doing? Why don't you just buy your chicken or your meat from the grocery store like a normal person? And I remember the first time she told me that story, I was like, oh, people are disconnected. People don't understand where their food actually comes from.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say it kind of leads to a general disconnection from reality. I mean, we want everything so sanitized, and it's fine if it's out of sight, out of our sight. We don't have to think about it. And yeah, it goes hand in hand with a lack of responsibility. Because if you are taking the life of an animal, you should know that. You should have some respect for the animal. And I think being part of that animal's life and then butchering it and processing it yourself is a big part of gaining the realization of that circle of life type thing. Instead, we get the Disney-fied version. We just want to sing a little tune about it, but not think about it.
That's why people get. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just going to say, even a couple of weeks ago, like my mindset has changed such that a couple of weeks ago, we had a raccoon in the chicken coop and I didn't hesitate to grab my bow and arrow and that thing was dead within a matter of minutes. I mean, I grabbed the camera. Don't get me wrong. We filmed it. But that thing, I grabbed the bow and arrow, I put a hole in it, and then I spent the rest of I skinned it. I'm going to make a nice hat. Because that, like, my job, not only to protect my family, is to protect my family's food. And my chickens are part of my family's life cycle. They give me eggs. They give me, they give me milk. That's not true. My chickens they feed my family. So if something's just going to eat them willy-nilly, and a raccoon had gotten into the coop and killed one of our chickens. And so I was ready. As soon as I saw that thing, I went to close them up one night and I saw a tail leave through the back door. And I was like, we're not having any of that. So I ran, grabbed my bow, got an arrow, and it took a single arrow. I walked into the coop and it was hanging in the rafters like this. And it just froze when it saw the flashlight. And I was like, I'm going to skewer you. And I did. And that for some people would sound odd and it would sound disgusting that you would just do that. And I mean, I disposed of they're a detritivore. They're disgusting. They eat garbage. So I'm not going to eat a raccoon, but I was protecting my chickens and I had to take a life to do so. And I think people are disconnected. Like you said, Dan, I think people are so disconnected with reality of where their food comes from. And you hear that, I don't know if you guys have gotten into it with regards to the gun debate, but it's something I'm definitely going to be talking about in coming videos, in that rurally, especially in rural New Brunswick and rural Canada, you I hesitate to say you need a firearm, because you don't necessarily need a firearm, but in order to protect your livestock, you definitely need to be prepared. And I think having a firearm can lead you to being more prepared and more aptly able to protect your livestock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's where you see things like a firearm, which is a basic tool of life out on the land, and people who are disconnected from being any connection with the land, they just think of it as, I don't know, whatever was portrayed in movies they watch or whatever media they consume, and they have no true life experience in their own lives to measure what they see in media against. I think that kind of widens the gap between reality and television. So getting people grounded, I think, is one of the best things, actually showing them some of that, getting them to embrace a little bit of that if they can. It can be tough. Like you said, a lot of people don't want to see things like killing a wild animal, but when it comes down to that's your dinner or his dinner, you got to pick you and your family over the wild animal in that case.
Well, and I would wager that a lot of today's mental illness stems from the not being able to, or not having the opportunity to go and play outside, and to be, that fresh air is so important, especially for young kids, and for people who aren't getting that either they're cooped up. I mean, people are cooping themselves up in New York City apartments, or they're cooping themselves up in apartments in Toronto or whatever. And they're treating you're treating your own body like livestock, and you would pick it if you gave animals the same conditions. So people are putting themselves into these hardships that we really shouldn't be. We should be growing gardens. We should be working with our hands, especially as men. I feel that we really should be putting in the work physically. If you're not going to the gym because or if you're not going to the gym and don't have an active lifestyle, you are missing out on so much. Those endorphins are so good for your body and for your mental health. So if you're not getting outside, if you're not getting to make something or see the fruits of your labors on a regular basis, then I feel that more and more people are falling into despair because they don't feel as useful. I know a lot of my stuff, with it being on the computer, I find at the end of the day, if my computer goes down, if I lose a hard drive, if I even just turn this setup off, it doesn't exist. But outside, my chickens, my family upstairs, this all exists in reality. So staying rooted in reality is very important. And it's so easy to get lost on your phone. I won't pull it out again because it'll make a noise. But it's so easy to get disconnected from reality and not realize that you can go outside and you can plant a carrot, and then in a few months' time you can pick a carrot. Instead, it's that immediate gratification of, you can plant it in Farmville and then have that carrot by morning, 24 hours later, or you can raise a chicken in 7 days, and it just doesn't work that way, because your Clash of Clans is not going to be identical to how you're going to raise chickens, and you're not going to go running out there to your phone to protect your chickens from a raccoon.
Doing things with your hands, having that physical work, that sense of accomplishment you get from that, I don't think you can get that from anything. So many people have jobs where it's kind of the same mindless things over and over again. They don't feel like they're accomplishing anything, and that really does lead to, I think, more depression and, in general, a less hopeful and optimistic outlook on life. But when you're doing things like actually accomplishing things on the homestead, that's hard to beat. Even as difficult as the struggle can be at times, I think the moments where things do go well, or at least those moments of accomplishment, I think that's something, it's hard to describe, but it's really empowering. I think that's something that can really carry you forward even through the losses.
Yeah, I think it's important just to qualify and say not everybody has a job that maybe they don't feel they accomplish things or feel accomplished in that. But I know what you're saying. It is something different than what most people are doing for a daily job.
Oh yeah, I definitely wouldn't say that you can't have a purposeful life and work a job on a computer. There are a ton of skills and very creative people doing all manner of work, But for the people who are trapped in something they don't want to be doing, I really wish there was more ways to get connected and give them a chance to work with their hands, experience a little bit of life out on the land.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so to jump back from that into maybe how you got started, did you launch into everything all at once? Or did you kind of start with one thing, like maybe the chickens at first?
I started with chickens. I remember having no background in homesteading or farming of any kind. I was just curious and asking around, and I was living with my parents back, would have been 3 or 4 years ago now, and I found out that it was chick delivery day. And I called my mom and I said, "How many chickens do you want?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "How many chickens do you want?" And she said, "I don't know, like 6." So I showed up at home with 6 little chicks, and I had no idea how to care for them. So we figured it out. We made a spot for them. And then after I got bored of them, I moved out of their house and got my own house.
You got your own chickens.
Yeah, and even as I was still on this sort of this discovery journey as to what homesteading would be and how I would, because I bought a small house and kind of wanted it to be like this fancy little off-grid cabin. But I had grown this sort of community, like we talked about. I'd grown this community of people that was following my content, and I just put it out there. Hey, I would love to have some chickens if you want to get rid of some. And I got a couple of messages, and ended up giving a rooster and then half a dozen chickens, and that's where I started. And then I think today was the first day I actually ever paid for chickens, because people were just, they get rid of them in the fall because they're like, look, we've had our layers. We don't really want to kill them. They're still young. So do you want them? And I've frozen a few chickens that way, unfortunately. They just weren't hardied enough to their outdoor conditions. But yeah, it's something that I started with just a few chicks, figured it out-ish. Went on to chickens. I had pigs for a little while, which is something I'd like to get back into. We currently have a couple of beehives that is sort of a trial by fire. No matter how many times you get stung, if you love it, you just keep going back to it. Even in this week's video, there's a little bit of me. I got stung on the eye recently. So like this whole side of my face was like puffed right up. It looks amazing in video. It didn't hurt at all, but it looks amazing. And we just keep learning, and we keep growing, and we want to find more property so that we can do more. I already have friends and family who are like, if you want to keep cows, like we'll pay for you to keep cows and you can keep a cow for us. And I'm like, okay, cool. So there is potential for this. And there are people who want to see where their food comes from and want to see that their animals that they have in their freezer or end up in their freezer were actually cared for and were proper food. Because I think there's so many documentaries that have been made in the past 5 or 10 years that are like, look, your food is crap and your animals are being abused to be able to go to your supermarket. So if you know your farmers and you know your local producers, or if you are one of your local producers, you have a much you're much closer to your food, and you have a bigger or much more respect for what goes into it, for sure.
And contrary to, what most of society thinks, your food's probably safer. Like you're better able to trust your food and what has actually gone into it than what you buy at the store. You can go and look at the cow while it's been raised, and things like that. They don't let you do that to the big feedlots.
Do you say that? But I've been starting to like dabble in human compost, and like you gotta be real careful with that shit.
Yes.
Literally.
Saw that episode.
So now, I was just gonna say you've mostly talked about animals so far. What about the other side of it? What about the gardening and plants and fruits and vegetables and all that? What have you done any of that sort of stuff?
as an animal lover, I try to stick to the animals. I mean, if I could be carnivore, I would just eat animals, but for some reason, apparently I need vegetables. So last year was an absolute. Last year was really the first year that I dabbled in gardening. I mean, anybody can throw a few seeds in a little planter and then maybe grow mint or maybe grow some herbs. But last year we had a proper garden, and I just got so busy throughout the summer through different gigs I was filming and just different events that a lot of it went by the wayside, and the ground wasn't prepped properly. Ground wasn't fertilized properly. The plants just simply weren't taken care of, weren't watered. I think last year was a hard year for some water in our region, and we killed just about everything. I mean, I grew up seeing, like in Carleton County, you see potato fields and you see corn fields, and I just thought those were things that you just pop it into the ground and it grows. And I killed it all. I think we probably got a handful of potatoes and a handful of beans, and that was realistically it. But fortunately, this year we've had a relatively bountiful harvest, especially compared to last year. We got a ton of radishes and lettuce and kale, but we're still doing it small scale because we didn't want to spend a ton of money. And I wouldn't encourage anybody to spend a ton of money to try to fail. So if you can do it small scale and learn, and where our garden is where our chicken coop was, or our chicken run was last year. So now it's got all of that compost and it's super fertile, and we're still growing stuff: tomatoes, carrots, beans and peas. And Nicole just said that the cucumbers have started sprouting. We got little baby cucumbers. So it's so rewarding to see those little things. And we've got a zucchini that started. It's like the size of my thumb right now. So by morning it'll be like this big for sure.
Yeah.
The zucchinis freaking grow like crazy. And so we haven't necessarily been successful in growing other than this year a little bit, but it's something that we're still keen on learning, and something that even talking to friends who are botanists and people who work in the field, it's hard. Working with Mother Nature, working outside, you're really beholden to the weather, beholden to the temperatures, beholden to the soil conditions, the seeds that you get. So there's a lot of variables where for animals, I mean, you just got to keep it safe and keep the raccoons away for the most part. But for a garden, it can be hit and miss, man. For some days and some months, you may just lose everything, and that is scary.
Yeah, it's interesting how so many people approach it from different perspectives, because on our property, we would be definitely more towards the plant side. And while we do animals, we don't do animals in a big way. So it is interesting how different people approach homesteading with both different goals and just the different aspects of it, and really focus in on those other aspects, whether it be interest or knowledge base or whatever. But yeah, it is interesting.
Do you think that trial by fire is kind of the best way to learn? Or what is your perspective on that, looking back after kind of jumping in with both feet?
Trial by fire is how I learn best, because I force myself, even with the chickens, like I force myself into situations I have no business being in. I mean, even on a regular basis with work, I commit to projects that I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. I remember a few years ago, I went into a project that I was prepared to quote them for a few less zeros than they had a budget for, and they proposed their budget, and I was like I was sweating bullets. So trial by fire, for me at least, is something that like I thrive in. I love it. I mean, I have chronic ADHD, so like I said, if I could work 40 hours in 2 days, I would definitely do it. Like if I could get all the farm work done and just kind of chill and relax and do what I want to do, which is my video content or my homesteading stuff, then I would. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to create this brand and to be able to grow more to a point where I can have and indulge in those. And I think a lot of people enjoy my trials by fire, because I like to film them and do some ridiculous stuff. I mean, I get myself into trouble. I've blown myself up. I've gotten stung multiple times by bees because I've been a little arrogant with how to keep bees. And then, I mean, you can lose a lot of money that way, and you really have to be careful. I wouldn't recommend anybody do it that way, but do it little by little. Like you said earlier, do things little by little just to start, because if you're not starting, you're not going anywhere. So just take these baby steps and learn along the way, learn from other people. Maybe if somebody else has bees and you want to learn about bees, go see them, go harvest honey with them, go take care of their hives for a little bit. If you want to take care of chickens, go see if a neighbor does, or if a couple of people want to go in on some stuff. But I would never encourage anybody to do trial by fire unless you want to fail, which I just love it so much. It's so much fun. Oh my God. I love screwing up on a regular basis. Like, it is, even there's things that I'll text Owen about and like, should I just, and he's like, no, don't do that. I'm like, all right, cool. Sweet. I won't do that, or I will. And I'm like, all right, I know to document this really hard because it's really stupid. There's stuff that sometimes you can take that advice, and then sometimes you got to take it with a grain of salt and be like, I don't know, I'm going to do me. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to own it at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right. Because what works for one person might not necessarily. I mean, there's some things that universally are
universal bad ideas.
Yeah, that's right. But not everything is, and just because I wouldn't do certain things on my property doesn't mean the next person, shouldn't do it or attempt it on their property. So yeah, for sure. Do you have any like resources that you would recommend, or like places that are helpful to go for advice for a knowledge base beyond neighbors or whatever? Like, have you found any resources particularly helpful that you can think of?
My greatest resources that I've found have been extrapolating from online communities. So whether it's and I mean, despite what people may think, I hate social media so much. Like, I work in it. It's literally my job, but it is something that is so bad for your mental health. But what it has been very beneficial for is meeting some incredible people that have genuine passion for a lot of these things. Like, Owen, you said you guys are more keen on growing the vegetables and growing plants, and I'm more keen on growing animals. So I don't really know as much. So to be able to make these connections, and I mean, that's how we met. I was making a YouTube video, and so to be able to meet these people and to just wade through the garbage, because quite frankly, there's so much garbage online, but to be able to find somebody and to message them and then sometimes ghost them because they're crazy, and then find another person who is actually beneficial, that will give you some knowledge or even give you the time of day. Because there's so many people out there. I mean, there's literally billions of people online at any given point, right? All over the world. I thought Ben was in New Zealand with his life, but you got people all over the world at any given time online that you can ask stuff of. And a lot of these things, like you said, Owen, a lot of these truths are universal. So whether it'll work for you or somebody else, it might depend on your zone, or growing zone or region or species that you're trying to grow. But you can get so much information online. And if you don't have social media, go to different forums. YouTube is a great place to definitely take things with a grain of salt, but even message some of your favorite creators and take that leap, because developing that community, especially in the day and age we are now, it's super hard to meet people. And some people are genuinely afraid to meet new people, whether it's social anxieties or fear from what's happened over the last 2 years. So being able to reach out via email, via text message, via Signal, Telegram, there's so many different outlets that you can find little groups, little pockets of people that have similar ideas, and just jump right in. I mean, you can search any interest on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, and find a Facebook group with hundreds of thousands of people that have similar interests. Now, the bigger groups, I will say, are going to be more prone to jumping down your back and then calling you an idiot for not knowing things. So you got to have a strong constitution to be able to wade through all of that garbage and to be able to find those nuggets, those really valuable nuggets of information. But I think if you're going into the zone or trying to figure out homesteading in general, you're going to have that constitution to be able to wade through, I don't know what I'm doing and I just want to learn. And if you can find those pieces and start to grow, you're going to learn by failing, because you don't make the same mistake twice. You've only got 10 fingers, so you've got 9 to lose.
Maybe a few less, but yeah, no, I agree with that because I think, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, I definitely, one of the best ways for me to learn is to fill in the gaps of my current knowledge with very specific questions. And sometimes getting very specific questions answered on with, with a Google search or a YouTube search or whatever can be pretty hard. But if I have that person who I I've connected with, and I know they don't mind answering stupid questions, that I could just any time of the day or night throw it off, and they'll get back to me when they can, and they'll just answer my question. That to me is very valuable part of the community because you don't necessarily need all the information. You just need maybe the specific information in that moment to fill in the gaps of your knowledge to make you successful. And I always try when I can, when I have the opportunity, to be that person for other people as well. But like, for example, right now, I one of my current sort of avenues of interest in learning is ham radio. I know nothing about that. Like I it's all Greek. So I've managed to find someone, that if I have a question, I can fire off a Facebook message and be like, so what does this mean? Or how would I do this? Or like, just, probably stupid questions to this guy, but he's very patient in kind of explaining it all out and things like that. So, no, I think that the community side of things probably is one of the best for people starting out. Any other questions from you guys? I was
just going to comment there that it's definitely a way to find out what kind of community you're in when you start asking for advice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So if you could only give one piece of advice to new homesteaders, what would it be? I mean, you've given some advice, today, on the show through the whole show. But if you could just pick one, what would it be?
I think it would, and it's kind of a cop out because it sounds so cheesy, but like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes are very big. I mean, try not to make the mistakes that like will burn down your house, but be willing to. I didn't install my wood stove. There's a reason I got somebody else to install my wood stove. I'm not that smart.
I thought maybe you were looking at the charred remains of part of your house or something like that.
Hopefully not in an upcoming video, but no, there are things that are worth the risk, and then there are things that you should seek more advice on. But being able to find where your balance point is of like, okay, I'm comfortable taking this risk with chickens or with pigs or with getting a cow, and then also trying to figure out, okay, where am I not comfortable? Where do I need to grow my comfort level, or what things do I need to learn, or where do I need to find a friend that can fill those gaps? And I think being humble is a huge thing, and learning from other people is just something. In the last couple of years, we've met people, Nicole and I, through YouTube, through Facebook, through many other avenues that I never would have had the opportunity from. I've literally met people that I've gotten advice from in Australia. And so I never would have had that opportunity if it wasn't thanks to social media and through my job. And I've met some incredible people. I've met some very weird people. I've met some crazy people, and I love it. I love learning from the crazy guys that grow weed and stuff in their backyard, because man, do they know a lot about fertilizer. But there are some amazing people in these communities and in your community, depending on how far out you live. But there are people who are doing this, and sometimes finding them can be a little hard to wade through all that chaff. But to get to the proper seeds and to get through to what nuggets of knowledge that those people have is so valuable, that may be lost if you aren't talking to the 80-year-old man that you see in your community every day. Like, he's weeding his garden on your way to work, and you're like, oh yeah, there's John. But like, if you talk to John, he knows some shit. Like, John knows. And he's seen, so there's stuff, like valuable stuff that's been taught to him through years. So if you can carry that stuff down and continue to carry on that legacy and continue to learn and screw it up, you're gonna go far. If you want to homestead, if you want, just do it. It means don't listen to other people. They'll tell you not, it's expensive. It's as expensive as you want it to be. If you just want to jump in with a couple of chicks, I mean, a chick today was $1.75. You can do $1.75 for a chicken. Now, if you're gonna feed them, it's a whole other story. But you just figure it out along the way, and if you're willing to do that, you're in for one heck of a ride, because it is a blessing, a curse, all at the same time, and it's wild.
Yeah, I think there's so many people that don't start because of the fear of messing up, and that's unfortunate, because we could have so many more people in the homesteading space doing this, but they're afraid of messing up, and you can't be afraid of a little bit of failure in homesteading, because as you've rightfully pointed out, that's one of the best ways to learn. So
And sometimes it's not your fault.
no, that's right, sometimes it's Rocky Raccoon's fault.
He's right here. He's in the freezer right there. I swear he's like 2 feet from me. Awesome.
Are there a couple things you haven't tried yet, but you're looking forward to?
I'm looking for, like, as I've said, as an animal lover, I'm really looking forward to keeping larger livestock. The biggest we've gone is potbelly pigs, which aren't really great meat animals. So we're looking forward to getting some proper pigs, getting some sheep, maybe goats for milk, even though everybody I talk to tries to talk me out of it. Because goats apparently are a menace and they're awful. And this is one of the times that I've texted Owen and I've asked it, and I'm like, I'm gonna do it anyway, because you're gonna need extra cameras. So those are the things that man, there's so much that I haven't done yet. I mean, dabbling in, which is more the off-grid side than the homesteading side, but dabbling in solar and regenerative energy. Like, we've got a river out back that I would love to put a little water wheel into and figure out how to capture energy from it, and then energy storage. There's so many things I have to learn, and I'm thankful for my previous experience, but I think I'll continue to learn for years and years, and I don't ever want to stop learning.
Yeah. Homesteading really is a lifetime of learning. Life should be a lifetime of learning, but with homesteading, there's even more. Yeah.
And it's so key that you said the humility aspect of it, because as you, like, just as a homesteader, as you learn and figure things out, you also learn and figure out how much you don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like, I heard a saying one time, and it was just like, fail forward. And it's just like learning from your mistakes.
I like that a lot. Yep. Fail forward, figuring out how not to do things and how not to get in trouble with your wife, because that seems to happen a lot. Because I have an idea for a video, and then she'll be like, don't do that. And I'm like, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to film your reaction. The human manure video, which was a terrible idea, but I did it anyway.
Oh, that's funny. So do you have any social media or, links to your show or anything you want to promote?
Because we've got to put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. You can message it to me later.
No. We'll promise to put it in the show notes, but we'll forget about it.
There you go.
Get the verbal plug in right now.
Most of our social media is Homegrown Show with Ben Cummings. That's both Facebook and YouTube. The show Homegrown, which will be our experience for the last year, will be available on Bell 5 TV1 in the spring. But otherwise, feel free to reach out to me. Our website is Homegrownsshow.ca, which you can see what we've got going on there. But otherwise, if you can find me on social media, where I usually am doing some crazy stuff, feel free to reach out. If anybody's listening and they want to ask questions about things that I have made mistakes of, what they want to dive into and figure stuff out, either I know what not to do, or I know somebody who knows more than me that I can point you in that direction.
Cool. Well, like I say, we will do our best to put all that information in the show notes in case you couldn't write it down fast enough. But thanks so much, Ben, for being on the show. This was really great.
Yeah,
is
it's
my
been a
pleasure.
blast. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I will keep you updated with how our 100 chickens goes. Maybe we can hop on in 8 weeks or so when I am all bloodied with chicken guts. All these chickens that I have on my hands, whether they survive or not, who knows? Stay tuned, I guess. Oh, goodness. Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me on. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Cool. Talk to you later.
News this week. What have we got that's interesting and juicy?
Well, you want something? You want something that's really juicy? On the 1-year anniversary of telling the entire United States that if you had both of your first doses and then you were fully boosted and up to date, you would not get COVID. President Biden has COVID. It's
that's funny.
I put that in the win column because
He's an old man.
not to mock him, but more of the mindset, because the true science and the truth behind a lot of the facade that's been carried in the last 2 years and the lies and things like that, the truth is going to arise. And what we've been fed from mainstream is that, yeah, if you are up to date, you can't catch it. I'm sorry, but that's not what the science says.
Ben, are you really suggesting that someone's credibility takes a hit when they keep saying things that turn out to not be true?
Maybe.
Sorry, I didn't have my crickets noise right there.
Use discernment, people.
Well,
and yeah, let's move on from that before we get in trouble. Boss column. What have you got here, Ben? Tesla sells its Bitcoin. What, all of it?
The majority of it. They bought
Really?
Tesla bought about $1.5 billion worth, put it on their balance sheet as a company, and I couldn't find a like 100% final number, but there's estimations that it's right around 75% of it. And I mean, obviously with the tanking, it's like one of the things we talk about with Bitcoin is, just because it's going down doesn't mean you have to sell it. Unless
I
you're
wonder if they would have sold at a loss even. Because
no, they didn't.
Stories came out, I think it was in January was it 2020? Things were on the way up, I believe, at the time it was announced. So they'd probably bought in previously. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bought in under 20,000 US.
Okay.
Yeah, they realized a gain on their sales.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Yes, they realized a gain on their sales.
Yeah, have to do some better digging for next week.
Yeah, I mean, the reported reason I think that they sold was because of issues with their production plants in China, and they needed basically cash on hand to make sure things were still running smoothly, and that was probably the easiest asset they had to liquidate in order to make sure that happened.
Yeah.
Well, that shouldn't be surprising. I mean, because part of the talk around Tesla buying in was that inflation was costing corporations so much because of their cash reserves, right? So, I mean, when you have those financial reserves, it's for a reason. It's because you're going to spend it at some point. So
that's right. Exactly.
It shouldn't be a super big surprise that they're going to sell a little bit of it.
That's right. And it worked out
a big chunk if that's what they needed.
And it worked out for them in that they realized a gain, which will probably hurt them on tax day. But, they realized a gain. So their hedge on inflation actually worked, in that respect.
Yeah. So we can turn this, I mean, the article.
So is that a win?
I was going to say it could turn it around into a win. I just had it there because some of the things I was reading, people were obviously painting it in a very negative light. But yeah, just kind of threw that in. I really wanted to get your guys's takes on it. That was a big reason I tossed it in there.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is not a panic thing.
No, not at all.
Really could care less whether Elon holds Bitcoin or not. I think that it probably was done quite strategically because it was done over a period of time. They didn't just one day all of a sudden,
Don't
say, oh, by the way, we're going to drop, $1 billion in Bitcoin in one day. It happened over a series of months.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's enough to actually affect the market too much if done in a sort of steady way. I don't think that's really enough. I'd have to sit down and do the math on, the market cap versus that amount of Bitcoin. But I don't think that's really that much. That's a significant amount in that respect. So yeah, I think that as a company, it was a smart decision. I don't think they would have done it if it was a dumbest decision. They're a pretty smart company, and Elon's a pretty smart guy. So that's the easiest asset for them to liquidate to keep their company in good shape. Then that's what you buy assets for, like that, I guess. Liquid assets. So
yeah. There's a little bit of something going on in Sri Lanka. Their president has fled the country amidst, there's basically an uprising, and they are in a very, very dire socioeconomic position. So things are looking pretty bleak there from what I was reading on the Daily Wire. And then in the win column, we've got some green candles on the Bitcoin books, which is always nice to see, especially when, Bitcoin starts recording the longest down dip in its history. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to comment on that crisis in Sri Lanka. It kind of surprises me that, I thought an insurrection, you just, you go in, you take a selfie and you go home. So I'm a little confused by this actual violence thing.
Yeah, there's even talk of seizures of people's private property by the government, different things like that. So and I think if I remember reading the article correctly, it was the president fleeing was a way for him to kind of keep his office while remaining untouchable.
Basically, what the idea was, while he was in office, he's immune from prosecution, which is,
right.
very, very convenient for a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had promised to resign when they kind of forced him to.
Yeah.
When the protests forced him to, and I think the fleeing probably was a way of avoiding prosecution, because if he'd stayed and resigned, he would have faced prosecution.
Correct.
And by fleeing, I mean, it's like anything. If you're in another country that your country doesn't have jurisdiction necessarily. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing that dictators come to violent ends. It's crazy.
Yeah. Or they end up in other countries. I think that was something interesting I took away from an interview with the president of El Salvador. And he talked about how many of the country's previous executives or people in high offices now live in Nicaragua. So, yeah, that's the way it goes. I don't know. Is that maybe better than in our countries where they just get to stick around and never lose their power?
That's right. We tend to just keep promoting them to higher office until they hit prime minister, and then we can't promote them any higher. So
totally stuck.
So if you guys want to send feedback, our email address is changingnormal@protonmail.com. You can check out our landing page, blueberry.com/changingnormal. And of course, please like, share, and subscribe. And definitely leave some reviews if you're listening on a podcast app. Reviews are awesome, especially if they're 5 stars. Hint, hint.
Send us a boostagram. Give us a boost on Fountain.
Yeah, definitely check out that. Donations, if you're into this Lightning URL stuff, working that out, as Ben is, you can send those to changingnormal@fountain.fm. And with that, thanks for listening. And remember, create your own new normal every day.